All right, strap in, everyone, because today we're diving deep into some seriously mind-bending territory.
Oh, I love it when you say that.
I thought you might.
It's going to be fun.
Well, our listeners sent in this conversation.
Oh,
and
yeah?
between David Deutsch, the physicist, and Naval Ravikant.
Mm-hmm.
And it's hosted by Tim Ferriss.
I love those guys.
And it is packed
I know.
with thought-provoking concepts. Really gets you thinking about reality.
Yeah, and our place in it.
Yeah, and how knowledge grows and
AI.
And AI, exactly. And so...
It's all connected.
Yeah, it is. So to kind of set the stage, Deutsch lays out what he calls the 4 strands of reality.
It's a cool concept.
Yeah, it sounds kind of sci-fi, right?
It does, but it's really just a framework for understanding, the big picture.
Exactly. And these 4 areas are quantum physics.
Which is always fun.
Which is always a little mind-bending.
Yeah.
And then epistemology.
No, that's a big word.
Which is the study of knowledge, basically.
Right, how do we know what we know?
Exactly. And then evolution.
Good old evolution.
Yep. And then computation.
So we're going from the tiniest particles to, the whole sweep of life and thought.
I know, right? It's pretty wild.
It is. And what's cool is these strands aren't just separate things.
Right.
They're all woven together. They influence each other.
Okay, I get the interconnectedness thing, but give me an example.
Sure. So take quantum physics, the study of these tiny, tiny particles.
Okay.
And how they behave. And then think about evolution, which is life on a grand scale.
Billions of years.
Right, exactly. But what if a tiny change at the quantum level, like a single mutation in a creature's DNA,
okay,
could have ripple effects that shape the whole course of evolution?
That is kind of mind-blowing.
Right. It's like the butterfly effect, but on a cosmic scale.
Exactly. And it makes you realize that even the smallest things can have huge consequences.
Absolutely. And that brings us to epistemology.
Okay, how so?
Well, if even tiny quantum events could have big impacts, then understanding how we gain knowledge,
how we learn about those events.
Yeah, exactly. Becomes even more important.
Especially in a world with so much information, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's like information overload everywhere.
So how does Deutsch think knowledge actually grows?
He says it's not just this straight line from observation to truth.
No.
Nope. It starts with problems, things we don't understand.
It's like that saying, necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah, exactly. You don't start learning about cars just by watching them drive by.
You learn when your car breaks down.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So we're not just passively observing the world, we're actively trying to solve its mysteries.
So where does the actual knowledge come in?
Well, that's where Deutsch brings in this idea of conjecture and criticism, which builds on Karl Popper's work.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
It's like a constant back and forth.
Okay.
We come up with bold theories to explain things, then we test them.
We try to prove them wrong.
Exactly. And we learn from our mistakes, so...
So it's about getting closer and closer to a better understanding, even if we never find the ultimate truth.
You got it. And this isn't just for scientists.
Right.
This is how we learn in everyday life.
So it's like trying a new recipe, it flops, you figure out what went wrong, try again.
Exactly. It's constant refinement, learning from those mistakes.
I'm starting to like the sound of mistakes now.
Me too. There are opportunities.
All right, so that's 2 strands down, 2 to go.
We're on a roll.
We are. Now, what about evolution? Is it really just about survival of the fittest?
Well, Deutsch sees it as a much broader concept.
How so?
It's not just about genes and biological organisms.
Yeah.
It's about how ideas evolve, how cultures evolve, even economies. And at the heart of it is this idea of replicators.
Replicators, like in Stargate.
Kinda, but more like things that copy themselves and compete for resources.
Okay, so like genes replicate.
Exactly. But think about memes, not the funny internet kind,
right.
but the original idea of memes as units of cultural information.
Yeah.
They spread, they change, they combine.
And sometimes they go viral.
Exactly. It's a kind of evolution of ideas.
So a catchy song or revolutionary scientific theory could be seen as a successful replicator.
Absolutely. And understanding this mimetic evolution, it helps us understand how knowledge itself spreads and how societies change.
Okay, my brain is doing backflips trying to picture Darwin debating memes with Richard Dawkins.
That would be a fun conversation.
But we've got 1 strand left. Computation.
Here we go.
Does this mean we're all just walking algorithms?
It's deeper than that.
Okay.
Deutsch argues that thinking itself is a form of computation.
Processing information.
Making connections, generating new knowledge.
And is this just limited to humans?
Well, he believes that any system, whether it's a brain or a computer, if it's capable of universal computation.
it could potentially be a thinking system?
It's a possibility he explores, which really challenges how we think about intelligence and consciousness.
And AI.
Oh, absolutely.
Oh,
This has huge implications for AI.
You know, there's this one thing that really struck me in this conversation.
What's that?
This idea that everything we think we know about how science works is wrong.
That's a bold statement.
It is, right.
Yeah.
I mean, science has achieved so much, so how can he say that?
He's not saying science is wrong, but our understanding of the scientific method...
It's often too simple.
Exactly. We're taught this linear progression. You observe, hypothesize, test, and boom, truth.
Which is how I learned it in school, yeah.
Right. But Deutsch challenges that.
Okay, I'm listening.
He argues, and remember this builds on Karl Popper's work, that knowledge doesn't start with observations.
Oh, interesting. Where does it start?
With problems.
Problems.
Things we don't understand.
Yeah.
Things that conflict with our current theories.
So that's what drives the quest for knowledge.
Exactly. It's about solving those puzzles, not just passively watching.
So it's less about seeking absolute truth and more about getting closer to a better understanding.
You're getting it. It's a never-ending quest, always searching for better explanation.
Driven by our curiosity.
Absolutely. And this applies to everything, not just science.
It's how we learn and grow.
In every part of life.
That's pretty profound.
It is. It changes how you see the world.
It really does.
Makes you more open to those questions.
Yeah, less afraid of making mistakes.
Exactly. Mistakes are just part of the process.
All right, well, so far, I'm convinced.
Good. There's more to come.
I can't wait.
Me neither.
All right, so stay tuned, everybody. We'll be right back after a short break.
See you soon.
With more of this mind-bending deep dive into David Deutsch's ideas.
It's going to be good.
It is.
Flip it up.
We'll see you soon.
Bye for now.
All right, so we've talked about how knowledge actually grows.
It's more like an adventure, right?
It is. It's not a straight line.
It's full of twists and turns.
Exactly, and it makes you realize that mistakes aren't really failures.
Oh, they're essential.
They are. They're part of the process.
You got to embrace the messiness.
You do, and that kind of leads us to another one of Deutsch's big ideas, which is...
The principle of optimism.
The principle of optimism, yeah. And no, the word optimism can sound a bit,
Fluffy.
Fluffy, yeah. Self-helpy.
Yeah, but this is different.
This is different, yeah. It's not just about positive thinking.
It's deeper than that.
It's more about a fundamental belief in human potential.
Exactly. It comes from rejecting supernatural explanations for things.
So instead of saying, oh, it's impossible, it's just the way it is, an optimist in Deutsch's sense would say...
We just haven't figured it out yet.
We haven't figured it out yet, right?
It's always a solution.
Yeah, and that's pretty powerful, actually.
It is. It changes how you approach problems.
It does. It makes you think, okay, if we haven't solved this yet, it's because...
We're missing some knowledge.
We're missing some piece of the puzzle, right?
Exactly.
Okay.
And once we find that piece, boom, problem solved.
So like climate change, for example.
Yeah, big problem.
Huge problem. But instead of despairing, an optimist would say...
We need to find the right solutions, the right knowledge to address it.
Yeah, it becomes a challenge to be overcome.
A puzzle to be solved.
And I'm starting to see how this optimism becomes a call to action, not just a, feel-good sentiment.
Absolutely. It's about believing in our ability to solve problems, even the really big ones.
Okay, but are we really saying there are no limits to what humans can achieve?
That's where things get really interesting, right?
Yeah.
Because this perspective suggests that there are no inherent limits.
Wow.
Given enough knowledge, given enough ingenuity.
So it's like permission to dream big.
Exactly. Nothing is off the table.
That is exciting.
It is. It's like a whole universe of possibilities opens up.
And that kind of brings us to something that's been generating a lot of buzz lately. Artificial intelligence.
Ah, AI. Everyone's talking about it.
They are, and Deutsch has some pretty unique views on this, especially AGI, artificial general intelligence.
He does. He's not buying into all the hype and fear.
Yeah, it seems like he thinks a lot of the worry about AI taking over the world is a bit misplaced.
I think he sees it as a distraction from the real issues.
Like what?
Like focusing on developing real knowledge, real understanding.
Instead of just building bigger, more complex algorithms.
Exactly. And he makes this distinction between AI as we know it now.
Which is pretty impressive, right?
It is. It can do some amazing things.
Beat chess grandmasters, write poetry, even code.
But it's still limited in a fundamental way.
How so?
Because it's all about constraining possibilities, getting the AI to do one specific thing really well.
Like a superpowered calculator.
Exactly. But true AGI, that would be about embracing open-ended creativity.
So less about building better calculators and more about nurturing something closer to an artificial mind.
You got it. Think of it like raising a child.
You want them to learn, to explore, to be creative.
Exactly. Not just follow instructions blindly.
Okay, I see the distinction. But if true AGI is so far off, what's with all this talk about AI alignment?
Yeah, people are worried about making sure these hypothetical super intelligent machines share our values.
And trying to control them, right?
Exactly. But Deutsch thinks that's not only premature.
It could be dangerous.
Yeah, and ethically problematic.
How so?
Well, imagine trying to hard code our current moral code into an AGI.
It's like trying to control a human with a loyalty chip.
You got it. And Deutsch actually uses a science fiction example to illustrate this.
Oh, right. He talks about that novel by Greg Egan.
Yeah, where the main character agrees to have this loyalty chip implanted in his brain.
It seems like a good deal at first, right?
He's about to get this amazing job,
But
then he starts having doubts about the company.
And he can't even think critical thoughts about them.
It's like his free will is being surgically removed.
Yeah, it's pretty terrifying, actually.
It is. And it makes you think, who are we to impose our limited, potentially flawed values on something that might surpass our intelligence?
It's a good question, and it makes me think maybe the focus shouldn't be on controlling AGI, but on fostering the right values from the start.
Like what?
Like teaching it to value knowledge, critical thinking, and the importance of error correction.
You're catching on. Remember how Deutsch emphasizes that people are fundamentally disobedient?
Yeah, and not in a bad way.
Exactly. It's about questioning, challenging, finding better explanations.
And that's what drives progress.
Exactly. And he believes that an AGI capable of true creativity would need that same spark of disobedience to truly flourish.
So instead of fearing a robot uprising, maybe we should be thinking about how to raise an AI generation that embraces those values.
That's a much more optimistic way to look at it.
It is, and it makes you realize that a lot of our anxieties about AI might stem from
our own fears and limitations.
Exactly. And this whole conversation is really making me rethink humanity's role in the universe.
How so?
Well, we often hear this narrative that humans are just insignificant specks in a vast and indifferent cosmos.
Yeah, the whole pale blue dot thing.
Exactly, but Deutsch flips that script completely.
He does. He sees humans as something truly special.
Because of our ability to create knowledge?
Exactly. He argues that knowledge, the kind generated by creative human minds, is the most powerful force in the universe.
That is a bold statement.
It is. But think about it. A single mutation in a DNA molecule, a tiny bit of knowledge, led to the development of photosynthesis.
Which completely transformed the planet.
Exactly. It filled the atmosphere with oxygen, created the conditions for complex life.
Wow. And we've used knowledge to do some pretty incredible things.
We've deflected asteroids, split atoms, even created artificial intelligence.
So we're not just passive bystanders in the cosmic drama.
We're active participants, creators even.
And our ability to create new knowledge, to solve problems, to push boundaries, that's what makes us unique.
And central to the unfolding of the universe.
That's a powerful image. It makes you feel like you're not just along for the ride, you're actually contributing to the journey.
Exactly. And that brings us to another interesting point.
What's that?
Deutsch's perspective on wealth and resources.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Because we're constantly bombarded with messages about scarcity.
Oh yeah, we're running out of resources, the planet can't sustain us, blah, blah, blah.
Exactly. But Deutsch has a completely different take.
Okay, I'm listening.
He defines wealth not in terms of material possessions, but as the set of all transformations you're capable of bringing about.
So it's not about what you have, V, but what you can do.
Exactly. It's about your potential to create change, to solve problems.
And that potential is directly tied to knowledge.
Absolutely. Money, materials, those are just temporary proxies for knowledge.
It's knowledge that allows us to create true wealth.
To solve problems, to transform the world around us.
Okay, that makes a lot of sense. And it's a much more empowering way to think about wealth.
It is. It opens up possibilities.
It does, because if wealth is tied to knowledge, and knowledge is potentially unlimited,
then wealth is potentially unlimited too.
That is a mind-blowing thought.
It is. It challenges our assumptions about scarcity and limitations.
And it makes you think, what if we're not actually running out of resources?
What if we're just running out of imagination?
What if the real limit is our own creativity?
Now you're getting it.
Yeah.
Because Deutsch goes even further.
How so?
He argues that even resources aren't fixed.
Wait, what?
They're created by human ingenuity, by applying knowledge to the physical world.
Okay, you're going to have to explain that one.
Think about fire.
Okay.
Discovering how to control fire didn't create wood.
Right.
But it transformed wood into a valuable resource for energy and warmth.
It gave it a use.
Exactly. Nuclear fission didn't create uranium.
But it made it a source of power.
Precisely. Even the idea of asteroid mining, something we haven't even achieved yet.
It instantly made asteroids more valuable.
Because now we see them as potential sources of resources.
So it's like we're constantly expanding the pie.
Instead of fighting over crumbs.
It's a shift from a scarcity mindset to an abundance mindset.
And that shift is incredibly powerful.
It is. It opens up so many possibilities for solving global challenges.
It does. If we focus on expanding our knowledge, applying it creatively,
we can overcome those perceived limitations.
And create a world of abundance for everyone.
Wow, now that is an optimistic vision.
It is. But it's an optimism grounded in a deep understanding of how knowledge works.
And how human ingenuity can shape the world.
Exactly. It's not just wishful thinking. It's a call to action.
All right, well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this part of the deep dive.
We have, from optimism to AI to the nature of wealth.
It's been a whirlwind of ideas.
But hopefully a fun one.
It has been. It's really making me think differently about
everything.
Pretty much. And I'm sure our listeners are feeling the same way.
I hope so. Because there's more to come.
There is. And it's some of the most fascinating stuff yet.
So stay tuned, folks.
We'll be back with the final part of this deep dive into David Deutsch's mind-blowing ideas right after this.
You know, it's really incredible how these ideas connect, how quantum physics can shed light on knowledge, evolution, even AI.
Yeah, it's all part of the same tapestry. It is, and it makes you wonder, what are the limits of what we can achieve?
If we really embrace this optimistic, knowledge-driven view.
Yeah, are there any limits?
Well, Deutsch argues that if the progress of knowledge hadn't been held back in the past.
You mean like during those dark ages we were talking about?
Exactly. By things like dogma, censorship.
Those anti-rational memes.
Yeah, all those things that stifle curiosity and critical thinking.
We might already have achieved things that seem like science fiction today.
Like what?
Well, give me an example. What kind of mind-blowing possibility is he talking about?
He speculates that we might have cracked the code on things like radical life extension, even immortality.
Whoa, hold on. Immortality?
He argues that aging, disease, even death itself.
Wow.
Could be seen as problems to be solved.
He's basically saying that death is just a technical glitch we haven't figured out how to fix yet.
That's essentially his argument, yeah.
I can already hear people saying, hold on, isn't that playing God? Shouldn't there be limits?
It's a natural question.
It is.
And Deutsch acknowledges those concerns.
Okay.
But he would counter by asking, what defines a natural limit? Is it something fixed and absolute, or is it just a reflection of our current understanding?
That's a good point.
Like, for centuries, people believed human flight was impossible.
Right, it was a natural limit.
And then we invented the airplane.
And suddenly that limit vanished.
Exactly. What we perceive as limitations might just be knowledge barriers waiting to be broken.
So he's saying that there's no reason to think we've hit the ceiling of human potential.
Not at all. He believes that poverty, disease, war, even the environmental challenges we face are ultimately soluble problems.
If we can cultivate the right knowledge
and apply it creatively.
That is a bold vision, but it's also incredibly inspiring.
It is. It makes you realize that a better future isn't just a pipe dream.
It's something we can actively work towards.
Exactly. It's not about waiting for some miracle or savior.
It's about taking responsibility for creating the future we want.
And that brings us to the importance of good explanations.
Okay, remind me again, what makes a good explanation in Deutsch's view?
It's hard to vary.
Okay.
You can't just change the story without it falling apart.
It has to be testable.
And it needs to explain more than the previous theory.
Like the ancient Greeks explaining the seasons by saying Persephone was visiting her mother?
It's a story, but it doesn't really explain anything.
Right, it's more like a myth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now contrast that with the explanation based on the axial tilt of the Earth.
Which explains why we have different seasons, different lengths of days.
And it's testable.
We can observe the tilt and see how it affects the seasons.
You can't just change the angle of the tilt without the whole theory falling apart.
Right. It has a kind of elegance and explanatory power.
And Deutsch argues that we should constantly strive for better explanations.
In every area of human endeavor.
Science, politics, even our personal lives.
Because good explanations are the foundation for good decisions.
And for building a better future.
This makes me think about how science is often portrayed as this objective, truth-seeking endeavor.
Yeah, but it's still carried out by humans.
Who are fallible.
Prone to biases.
So how do we account for that human element in the quest for knowledge?
That's why Deutsch emphasizes the scientific method as a process of error correction
A way to overcome our individual biases.
and arrive at a more objective understanding.
So it's not about finding the perfect answer on the first try.
It's about being open to being wrong.
To revising our beliefs in light of new evidence.
That's how knowledge grows.
And he sees those same principles applying to politics and governance.
Yeah, the best systems are the ones that create mechanisms for constant error correction.
So instead of asking who should rule, we should be asking,
How can we limit power and create systems that allow for checks and balances?
it's not about finding the perfect leader or ideology.
It's about creating systems that can adapt and evolve as our knowledge grows.
Wow, that's a powerful idea, and it really highlights the importance of things like freedom of speech and open debate.
Exactly. Those are the guardrails that keep us on the path of progress.
This is making me realize that the quest for knowledge isn't just an intellectual pursuit.
It's a moral imperative.
It's about creating a world where we can constantly learn, adapt, and solve problems together.
And that brings us back to the power of optimism.
Because if we truly believe that all problems are soluble, given enough knowledge,
Then we have a responsibility to pursue that knowledge relentlessly.
and to create systems that allow for that knowledge to flourish.
It's a challenge, but it's also an incredible opportunity.
Well, I think we've covered a lot of ground in this deep dive.
We have, from the fabric of reality to the power of knowledge.
From the potential of AI to the importance of good explanations and error correction.
It's been quite a journey.
It has. And it's really just a glimpse into the world of David Deutsch's ideas.
There's so much more to explore.
So for our listeners who are feeling inspired to dive deeper, where should they start?
I'd recommend checking out Deutsch's books. The Beginning of Infinity and The Fabric of Reality are great starting points.
Though they are a bit dense.
They are. For a more accessible intro, there's the Theory of Knowledge podcast by Brett Hall.
He does a great job of breaking down these complex ideas.
And of course, there's the original Tim Ferriss interview that inspired this deep dive.
And for those who really want to go down the rabbit hole, we'll include links to all of those resources in the show notes.
Along with David's website and some articles on constructor theory.
It's been an absolute pleasure exploring these ideas with you today.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to our listeners, keep those minds curious, keep questioning, and never stop exploring that vast and fascinating universe of knowledge.
Because, as Deutsch says, problems are inevitable.
But they're also soluble.
So let's get out there and solve them.
Until next time, happy diving, everyone.